Now in Numbers chapter 28 and 29, God gives Israel the details about sacrifices. I don't understand the significance of all these differences, but this is what it is. I had to write it out to be able to see it myself. So I wrote it all out. Here on the board, you go across the top, you got the daily sacrifice, the Sabbath. Every Sabbath day they had a special sacrifice in addition to the daily one. So every day they had the priest sacrifice 2 lambs, one in the morning, one in the evening. On the Sabbath days, in addition to that, you had to sacrifice 2 lambs. So there was 4 lambs every Sabbath day. I imagine 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening, but I don't remember him specifying that. The first day of every month, you had 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs, and 1 kid of the goats as a sin offering. All the rest was a burnt offering. The beginning of every month was like that. I don't know if that would be the new moon or the full moon. I don't know which one they counted as the beginning of every month. But then you had the Passover, and that was just eating a lamb. It really wasn't a sacrifice on an altar. Passover was just eating the lamb, according to the rules God gave. But the next day started the feast of unleavened bread. You know how they fled from Egypt? They didn't have time for the bread to be leavened. And God said, commemorate that by eating unleavened bread for the 7 days after the Passover meal. Every day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the priest had to sacrifice 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs, and 1 goat for sin offering. I don't know why, for the monthly sacrifice, God said a kid of the goats, and for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, He just said a goat every day. I don't know why one's a kid, specified as a kid, and one's not. I don't know. But I do know there's a difference. And every day that unleavened bread sacrifice was made of all those animals, a total of 11, it was in addition to the daily sacrifice. Whether it was with the month or not, He didn't say. I expect it was, in addition to the daily. Now the first fruits, which I believe, well in this case, makes it sound like the day of Pentecost, 50 days after Passover. Even though it's very confusing to me, especially in Leviticus 23. This is the sacrifice made at the Feast of First Fruits, let's say Pentecost. It's the same as every monthly sacrifice. It's the same as the 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs, and a kid of the goats. A kid specifically. Now the 7th month was a holy month, basically. The first day of the month you had, in addition to the daily sacrifice, and in addition to the monthly new month sacrifice, on the first day of the 7th month, they had to add this: 1 bull, 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs, and a kid of the goats. On the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the Old Testament calendar, same thing: 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 lambs, and a kid of the goats. And then for the 8 days of the Feast of Tabernacles, it's very interesting. God starts them off on the 15th day of the 7th month with 13 bulls. And it goes down by 1 every day. 12 bulls the 2nd day, 11 bulls the 3rd day, 10 bulls the 4th day, 9 bulls the 5th day, 8 bulls the 6th day, 7 bulls on the 7th day, and then on the holiest day, God just said, just do 1. You know God has a reason for doing that.
Yes.
What it is, I don't know. All of this, God had a specific purpose in mind. Something that's in the Holy Ghost for us, but I don't know what it is. It'd be a wonderful thing to understand, because He wasn't just naming numbers.
You would think the holiest day would have the 13.
I know. You think the holiest day would have the greatest number. But when He got to the really big time, He said, do 1. You know, when the sin for the whole nation of Israel sinned, 1 bull. But that's chapters 28 and 29 written out. Look, you know, I looked at this in the 7th month. And I said, well, I wonder why he kept saying, why he would say a kid here and a goat there. Look at this. 7:1 is a kid. 7:10 is a kid of the goat. 7:15 is a kid. 7:16 is a kid. Then he says, well, just a regular goat. Then 7:18 is a kid. 7:19 through 22 is goat, 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 goat. And I said, what? Why? And I counted them all here in the 7th month, and it's 5 kids and 5 goats. I don't know why, but God had a reason. He wasn't just randomly throwing out words. You saw that when he organized the camp. And the goats were for sin offerings. The rest of them were all burnt offerings. And if we don't understand why, the best we can do is know what it says. That's what I said all those years, Glenn, about Revelation. You need to know what's there, but don't try to figure it out. And then God
wound up giving it to you.
when it's time, God will turn the key, turn on the light, let you understand some of it. All right, Numbers chapter 30, talking about making vows to the Lord. Moses spoke to the heads of the tribe concerning the children of Israel, saying, this is the thing which the Lord has commanded. If a man makes a vow to the Lord, or swears an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. If he makes a vow, that vow is to be kept. Verse 3, if a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord, and bind herself by a bond, when she's still in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears her vow, and her bond wherewith she has bound her soul, and her father remains quiet, then all her vows shall stand. She has to keep every one of them. Verse 5, but if her father disallows her vows in that day that he hears it, not any of her vows or her bonds wherewith she had bound her soul shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her, because her father said no. There's no way a little girl in the house is going to vow to the Lord she's going to give away the family car to Eliezer. When father comes home, drives it home from work, and finds out she's vowed that car to Jehovah, and no way, kid. Let's forget that. But if he doesn't say no way, that car is going to go to Eliezer, if it's hers. She can't vow her father's car, but that's just an example. If a child at home makes that kind of vow, the father has the responsibility to approve of it or disapprove of it before God steps in and requires it. If she has an husband, when she vowed or uttered anything out of her lips wherewith she bound her soul, then it's her husband's responsibility to approve or disapprove. But he has to do it on the day he hears about it. He can't wait around. Verse 9, every vow of a widow or her that is divorced stands. Verse 15, if he waits a little while and then tries to make them void, then he shall bear her iniquity. If he refuses to allow her to do what she has vowed to do, after the time has passed for him to disallow it, then he's the one guilty instead of her. That's just. That's right. These are the statutes which the Lord commanded Moses between a man and his wife, between a father and his daughter, being yet in her youth in her father's house. Chapter 31, God said, Moses, you've already numbered the people now. You got your army ready. It's time to attack the Midianites and cause them to suffer because of what they did to you at Baal Peor. Avenge the children of Israel of the Midianites. Afterward you shall be gathered unto thy people. And Moses spoke unto the people, saying, arm some of yourselves unto the war, and let them go against the Midianites and avenge the Lord of Midian. Of every tribe 1,000 soldiers. So they're going to have 12,000 in verse 5. Verse 6, Moses sent them to the war, 1,000 of every tribe, them and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar the priest, to the war, with the holy instruments and the trumpets to blow in his hand. And they warred against the Midianites, as the Lord commanded Moses, and they slew all the males. And they slew the kings of Midian, besides the rest of them that were slain, namely Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba. 5 kings of Midian. Oh, Balaam also, the son of Beor, they slew with the sword. He should have gone back to Syria. instead of staying there and coming up with that plan to intermarry the Moabites and the Israelites. And the children of Israel took all the women of Midian captives and their little ones, and took the spoil of all their cattle and of all their flocks and all their goods. They burnt all their cities wherein they dwelt, and all their goodly castles with fire. They took all the spoil and all the prey, both of men and of beasts. And they brought the captives and the prey and the spoil unto Moses and Eleazar the priest, and unto the congregation of the children of Israel, unto the camp at the plains of Moab, which are by Jordan near Jericho. And Moses and Eleazar the priest and all the princes of the congregation went forth to meet them outside the camp. And when Moses saw the beautiful women there, and the married women, the now widows, he was angry about that. He was angry with the officers, with the captains over thousands and captains over hundreds, which came from the battle. And he said unto them, have you saved all the women alive? These are the ones who caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam. Earlier it said the Midianites. Now it says Balaam. Well, they were working together. And what a combination. An anointed prophet of God and the smartest people in the world sucked God's children right into the trap. Through the counsel of Balaam to commit trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor. And there was a plague among the congregation. Now kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that has known man by lying with him. All the women children, all the little girls that have not known a man by lying with him, you keep alive for yourselves. And you stay out of the camp 7 days. Whosoever has killed any person, or whosoever has touched any slain, purify yourselves and your captives on the 3rd day and on the 7th, and purify all your raiment, and all that is made of skins, and all of work of goats' hair, and all things made of wood. And Eleazar the priest said unto the men of war which went to the battle, you know, doesn't it seem sad? Think about all the little boys had to be killed, little boy babies, all that. God is a man of war. God has not changed since He gave that commandment. In other words, if God had to do this all over again, He'd do the same thing.
That's right.
Which Midianites are these? Are these the ones that lived down by the Red Sea? And did they go down there to battle with them? Or?
Genesis 25 says that when Keturah gave birth to those 5 sons, Abraham sent them all off from where he lived in southern Canaan to the east. Now, whether the Midianites that Moses fled to were just an offshoot of the big group wherever in the east usually means Mesopotamia, or whether that's just the direction Midian went, we don't know. But most Midianites, as far as I can tell, were travelers. Amalekites were travelers. They lived, a bunch of them lived in southern Canaan, just like a bunch of Midianites lived where you have it in your map books. But they were scattered around. There were some Midianites, a few Midianites with Israel right now, with Moses. Some of his kinfolk are with him. We're told over in Joshua that they were given an area around Jericho to live. And we're also told Moses' grandson, the grandson of Moses, I think he's the son of Jonathan, the son of Gershom. He became a priest, a false priest. He wasn't in the line of Aaron, so this is all for idolatry. Moses' grandson became the priest for the tribe of Dan when they moved way up north in the land of Canaan. And when they had their golden calf that they built up there in the north, descendants of Moses led Israel to worship the golden calf in the northern part of Israel until God wiped Israel off the map. So that's what's going to happen with Moses' family. His sons are going to be leaders of worship of a golden calf in Israel for hundreds of years, descendants. And you know, they felt especially honored to have Moses' descendants leading them in that worship.
When they kept these Midianite women, children that were virgins, and it says keep them for yourselves, did that mean they kept them and married them, like their children married them?
They probably married some of them, probably made servants of others, may have sold them to other Israelites. You could sell, some of them probably were of the kind of personality that they were made the lowest of servants. because they were foreigners, and God said you can use foreigners as bond servants. Some of them they probably married, some all in the middle. Some may have bought their freedom when they got older, worked hard and saved some money and bought their own freedom, either left Israel or stayed. All kinds of things probably happened with those girls. That'd be the normal course of life. All right, now, verse 21, Eleazar the priest said unto the men of the war which went to the battle, this is the ordinance of the law which the Lord commanded Moses. So Moses had told Eleazar. Eleazar is talking to the generals that went out to war. Only the gold and the silver, the brass, the iron, the tin, and the lead, everything that can survive fire, you shall make it go through the fire, and it shall be clean. You can keep it. Nevertheless, it shall be purified with the water of separation. Well, you wouldn't have to make it go through fire, but whatever would survive a fire had to be sanctified with that water of purification, which came from the ashes of a red heifer, you remember? Mixed with water. Nevertheless, it shall be purified with the water of separation, and all that abideth not the fire you shall make go through the water. You got to wash it. If you found something wooden there that you want to keep, it has to go through, wash it with water, and it'll be clean. And you shall wash your clothes on the seventh day and be clean, and afterward you can come back into the camp. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the sum of all the spoils of war that were taken. Add it all up, Moses, both of people and of animals, you and Eleazar the priest and the chief of the fathers, and divide the spoils of war into two parts, between them that took the war upon them and went out to battle, and between all the rest of the congregation. How many went out to battle?
12,000.
So he's going to divide all the spoils of war in half, give half to the 12,000, and then the other half scattered all through Israel. So who's going to get the bigger part? Whoever went out to war. That's right. That's just. And levy a tribute unto the Lord, like just a thanksgiving offering or a tax or something like that. A tribute unto the Lord of the men of war that went out to battle. Of every 500, those little virgins that you kept, one out of every 500 will be the Lord's, both of the persons and the beeves, that's the cattle, and of the asses and of the sheep. Take it of their half and give it to Eleazar the priest for a heave offering. And a lot of times heave offering was just basically a tithe of some sort, or tax that God imposed. And of the children of Israel's half, you take one portion in 50. One out of every 50 of those people and animals, of the persons, beeves, asses, and flocks, of all the manner of beasts, and give them unto the Levites. So the people gave one out of every 50 to the Levites, and the men of war gave one out of every 500 to the priests, to Eleazar. And Moses and Eleazar did, and then it tells all the numbers. And I'm supposing that you read through that. It's very interesting how it all comes out. Verse 48, this is something that never again happened in Israel's history that we know of. And the officers which were over thousands of the host, captains of thousands, captains of hundreds, came near to Moses, and they said, you know, we took a survey, and we numbered everybody that went to war, and we didn't lose anybody. We have 12,000 men attacking all those Midianites, and none of us got killed. That's pretty good. We have therefore brought an oblation for the Lord, what every man has gotten, of jewels of gold, chains, bracelets, rings, earrings, tablets, to make an atonement for our souls before the Lord. So they just wanted to give God a thanksgiving offering for everybody coming back alive. No matter what spiritual battle we have to go through, none of us have to die. We can all survive the battles of the Lord. And Moses and Eleazar the priest took the gold of them, even all wrought jewels, and all the gold of the offering that they offered up unto the Lord of the captains of thousands and the captains of hundreds was 16,750 shekels of gold. For the men of war had taken spoil, every man for himself. And Moses and Eleazar the priest took the gold of the captains of thousands and hundreds and brought it into the tabernacle of the congregation for a memorial for the children of Israel before the Lord. That's the avenging of the Midianites and Balaam. Now in chapter 32, the children of Reuben and Gad had a huge multitude of cattle, and when they saw this land between the Arnon and the Jabbok, they said, boy, there couldn't be any better land than this for our cattle. Let's go ask Moses if we can keep this land. Well, even up into Bashan. The Bashan is such a wonderful place for cattle that for animals to be called cattle of Bashan was a special name. It became such a well-known phrase that it started referring to rich people. Cows who grazed in Bashan were considered to be rich cows. So when they saw this I got pictures of this area of Bashan with cattle standing in the fields there. I think I've mentioned this before. After we'd been there a week or so, Jimmy mentioned, everywhere we go we see mountains. You look in any directions practically and you see mountains. Mountains everywhere. And we had to go up mountains to get to Bashan. But I noticed as we were driving through Bashan, after we'd gotten up there, I looked in every direction, and not only were there no mountains, there weren't even any hills. There weren't any slowly rolling. It was as flat as a pancake, flat as Kansas, up there on top. But they liked that land. But the flat land didn't mean that was good for cattle, because the cattle were on the hills that I saw. It was just good land for cattle. And Reuben and Gad recognized that, and they decided to go to Moses and ask him for this land over here instead of going over to Canaan. Now, Moses has already been to the border of Canaan twice, and the Israelites did evil, and God sent him away. He's already been to Kadesh Barnea twice. Once at the beginning of the 40 years, and then later when he hit the rock, 38 years later. And both times he was within, one more step, he'd have been across the border, and God sent him back. Now they're right there within view of Canaan land hills again, and these two leaders, the leaders of these two tribes come to him and say, we don't want to go over. How do you expect Moses to react? If he'd have had those tablets, he might have smashed them again. He said, what are you talking about? What's wrong with you? Your brethren are going to hear you talking like this, and they're going to be discouraged about going over there because we've got to fight. The Canaanites aren't going to see us coming and say, oh, it's their land now, let's leave. We got to fight some wars. And we've already won this territory now, and all the other tribes have fought. We've all been through this together, and you're saying, give us the land that you all won for us, and you guys go over there and keep winning your own land. You crazy? You know what God will do? God will send us back into the wilderness. You don't know God yet. You don't wear Him down. And they said, wait a minute, let me explain something here. They said, we'll leave our children and our cattle and our wives here. We'll go and fight for the other tribes' land the way they fought for this land. We're not saying that we're not going to go over there and do our part. We'll go do our part. Well, we like this land for our cattle. It's good. Look at there. It's good cattle land. And Moses said, well, okay, I guess that'd be all right if you do that. But I think this is the chapter where that famous saying of Moses is, if I can find it. In verse 20, Moses said unto them, if you will do this thing, if you will go armed before the Lord, this is Numbers 32, 20 and 21, before the Lord to war, and will go all of you armed over Jordan before the Lord, until he hath driven out his enemies from before him. Now notice Moses said all of you that were numbered. Right? How many men were numbered from Manasseh in the army? How many in this second numbering did they have?
52,700.
What's that?
52,700.
Okay, keep that number in mind. Let's see in Joshua how many of them did go over. If you go all of you armed over Jordan before the Lord until he has driven out his enemies from before him, and the land be subdued before the Lord, then afterward you shall return, and be guiltless before the Lord and before Israel. And this land shall be your possession before the Lord. But if you will not do so, behold, you have sinned against the Lord. And here's this famous phrase of Moses, and be sure your sin will find you out. It reminds me of that story in Scotland, I think it was, where this man was famous for training dogs to tracking dogs. Police loved his dogs because his dogs always found their man. They just let the dog smell something that belonged to the criminal. And they were great for finding runaway criminals. And then, as the story goes, something happened and he was accused of a crime. Whether he was guilty or not, I don't know. I don't know the story that well. But he was on the run. And when he was on the run, they had given them his smell. Going through the countryside trying to get away from the police. And he knew his sin was going to find him out. That's the way sin is. Sins you commit are dogs you've trained. They know their master. They're going to find you out. Now, remember on the PTL Club, the Cameron, Simon Peter Cameron? He's the one who told this story. And he said it was a true story. And he said this man got away as it happened because he made it to the river and got across. And the name of the river was the Red River. He said that's the only way you can get away from your dogs. Glory is to have your old scent washed away. Plunging into the Red River. Praise God. Well, so Moses did that. For Reuben and for Gad. And in verse 33 it adds this. Half of the tribe of Manasseh added into them. They jumped in with them. Half of the tribe of Manasseh wanted to go into Canaan, and the other half of the fathers of that tribe said, "No, we like this country too. We'll take our place over here." Then he gives a list in chapter 32 at the end of the cities given to Gad and to Reuben. Now, in your map books, after the land is divided, it's kind of odd to me, because it has Reuben down here, and then Gad, and then Manasseh. That must come from the book of Joshua, because the cities that are listed here gives Gad a lot of the cities down here that is later called Reuben's territory. So I don't know how they came about what they did. But this is if I ask you which 2.5 tribes, Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh, in whatever order you want to say it, they're the 2.5 that stayed over there. Chapter 33. One interesting fact we didn't point out earlier in verse 3, Israel left Egypt from Ramesses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month. Of course, that would have been pointed out. They stayed in Egypt on Passover and the next day took off. But that was when they started counting their time as leaving Egypt. First month, 15th day of the first month. And at the end of verse 4, the Lord executed judgments on the gods of Egypt. It says that in Exodus 12:12 too. That's where that is. I'll see where we need to spend any time here. In verse 38 it says, Aaron the priest died on Mount Hor in the 40th year after the children of Israel came out of Egypt. That's not in the 40th year of the wilderness wanderings. It's the 40th year after they left Egypt. They left Egypt and stayed at reached Mount Sinai, let's say sometime in the 3rd month, and they stayed until, about a year or something, so at Mount Sinai. So then they went up to Kadesh. That's when they had to go back for 40 years. So the 40 years of wandering starts at Kadesh, not when they left Egypt. So Aaron died in the 40th year after they left Egypt, which meant about a year and a half before they went into Canaan's land. He was 123 years old when he died on Mount whore. Verse 50. The Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho, that's at Shittim. Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, when you are passed over Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you and destroy all their pictures and destroy all their molten images, and entirely, that's what the word quite means, entirely pluck down all their high places. And ye shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell therein, for I have given you the land to possess it. And ye shall divide the land by lot for an inheritance among your families, and to the more you shall give the more inheritance, and to the fewer you shall give the less inheritance. Every man's inheritance shall be in the place where his lot falleth. According to the tribes of your fathers you shall inherit. But if you will not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, and they didn't, not all of them by a long shot, then it shall come to pass that those which ye let remain of them shall be pricks in your eyes, spiritually speaking, and thorns in your sides, and shall vex you in the land wherein ye dwell. And moreover it shall come to pass that I shall do unto you as I thought to do unto them, and that came to pass too, in time, about 800 years later. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, in chapter 34, command the children of Israel, and say unto them, when you come to the land of Canaan, this is the land that shall fall unto you for an inheritance, even the land of Canaan with the coast thereof. Then he describes the borders of the land of Canaan. The border of the land of Canaan, you start at the southern edge of the Salt Sea and come down to Kadesh, and then go back up. Where's the brook of Egypt? Which one of these is the brook of Egypt?
That one right there.
Yeah. That's the southern border. It says the river of Egypt there, but it's not talking about the Nile. It's talking about that little brook of Egypt. What is the western border, Randall?
Great Sea.
The Great Sea. Just follow the Great Sea right on up to, actually, does he mention Euphrates River here? Doesn't mention it here. Mentions Hamath, doesn't it? Look on look on map 1 in your map books, and look at Hamath, how far up north it is. It's on page 67. North of Israel, way north of Israel, Hamath.
Well, that's way up there.
Yep.
Up here, right across from this island.
Now the entrance of Hamath may be a valley close to Hamath or on the way up there, but that gives you a sense of how far north God said they were going to start out with. When he gave the description of the land to Abraham, he did say the Euphrates River. They never took this much land. Solomon and David controlled this much land all the way up to the Euphrates River. They had enough power to tax all the people who lived there, but Israel never even took the land in their day. Not that much. And then the southern border comes down from the area toward Hamath to all these bodies of water. The Sea of Chinneroth, which is in New Testament Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, and the Salt Sea, 100% in the land of Canaan. The border is on the east side of all those bodies of water. He says so. On the east side of the Salt Sea. So according to how God gave Israel the land, modern day Jordan, nation of Jordan, which is right here, modern day Syria, which is up there, of course Syria's been driven back. Israel's in Bashan now. But according to the Bible, they don't own one bit of the water in Jordan. Not one bit of the water in the Dead Sea. None of it. God said all that goes with this land right over here, Canaan's land. So the Jordan River is 100% in Canaan's land. Canaan's land is on the east bank, goes up to the east bank. Same with the Salt Sea and same with the Sea of Galilee. All the water goes with the land, and they needed it. You see in verse 11, the Sea of Chinnereth eastward. Now it had to take one man per tribe to be there with Eleazar and later Joshua when they cast the lots for for the land for each tribe. And these are the names in verse 17 of the men which shall divide the land for you, Eleazar and Joshua. And take one prince from every tribe. And of course, you know Caleb's going to be there. That's in verse 19. Sandy, what tribe is Caleb from? Judah. Somebody took Joshua's place out of Ephraim in verse 24, because Joshua was going to be leader of the whole country. Chapter 35. The Lord spoke unto Moses in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho, saying, Command the children of Israel that they give unto the Levites of the inheritance of their possessions cities to dwell in. Now what was the curse that Jacob gave to Simeon and Levi? It was scattered in Israel, divided in Jacob, he said. Well, this chapter tells how God's going to do that. Because there is no chunk of land given to the tribe of Levi. The Levites, being made the judges in Israel, are given 48 cities to live in, scattered like pepper in all the tribes. So they can teach all the tribes the right ways of God. What kind of animals are clean and unclean for eating and for sacrifice. The judgments of God. They're the lower court system. Their decisions could be appealed up to the high priest. He was the supreme court in Israel. But they were scattered in all the tribes, just the way Jacob said. Simeon is scattered with cities in the southern part of Canaan, which God gave to Judah. But of those 48 cities, there were 6 special ones. 6 cities of refuge. 3 on the east side of the Jordan River, 3 on the west side, and in Deuteronomy God says, if you ever take that land to the north, I'll add 3 more. Now the city of refuge provided no safe haven for any murderers. There was no safe haven for a murderer. But what about if you accidentally killed somebody? Suppose you were out in the woods chopping and the axe handle flew off and hit your friend in the head and killed him. Well, you see, being a near kinsman was so important and so right that in the heat of the moment, that man's near kinsman may want to kill you. Well, God gave you a city of refuge to run to until he could settle the issue. When you went to a city of refuge and said, I accidentally killed somebody, that was not the end of the matter. There had to be investigation to see whether there'd been trouble between you and the guy you accidentally killed before, to find out if you really had accidentally killed him. And if you really had, then wherever you had to go for the trial, they gave you safe passage back to the city of refuge, and you were required to stay in that city of refuge for how long? Till the high priest of Israel, who was living at that time, died. Then you could go back. But God protected you from somebody's near kinsman, which shows that God approved of the near kinsman system. He did. If you decided you were going to sneak out of the city of refuge and go back and visit some relatives, and that near kinsman caught you and killed you, he was not considered a murderer. Because God understood the generations of build-up of passion for somebody being a near kinsman, the responsibility that was on him. Even Reuben hated Joseph, but the feelings, the social pressure of being a near kinsman was so great, he came up with a plan to rescue Joseph from his brothers. It didn't work, but he was not there when they sold Joseph away into slavery, because he was the oldest brother. He was a near kinsman. God said in the law, isn't there a place where the near kinsman is the one that's going to put somebody to death legally in the law of Moses if they've murdered somebody he's responsible for? So the near kinsman wanting to avenge the death of somebody he's responsible for was very important and a good thing, a very good thing. God didn't want to discourage that, but he didn't want their passions to overwhelm them so that they killed an innocent person. So he set up the city of refuge, and if you were careless and weren't really watchful, not really thinking, and somebody ended up being killed, he gave you a safe place until the high priest died, but he also did not condemn the near kinsman for doing his part.
Could they visit, could the family visit them? Or
Oh, yeah.
Bring the family, anybody could live there?
Sure.
with him?
Sure.
And how did he make a living then? Did he just,
I don't know. We're not told how it worked at all as far as those details. Now there was no way for a murderer to pay his way out of the death penalty. No way. If after investigation it was found out you did hate the man that you killed by yourself out there working in the woods, and there was something going on with you, and you did actually murder him, you were given over to the near kinsman. You weren't brought back safely to the city of refuge because there was no way a murderer could escape the death penalty. And the way to do it rightly, the way to do the death penalty rightly, is as soon as you find out the man's guilty, you kill him. There wouldn't be half the murders there are in this country if men would do it the way God told Israel to do it.
Right.
The only issue that was important in Israel is, are you guilty or are you not guilty? If you're guilty, in an hour you're dead. Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, because punishment for crimes is not executed quickly, evildoers are multiplied among men. The way God does it is find out for certain. He said, you've got to know for certain. He tells in Deuteronomy about cases where you just find a murdered person. And he tells them what to do. And if you can't find for certain who did it, he has a ceremony they have to go through for ask God's forgiveness for the nation. But if you do find it out, as soon as you find it out, they take them out and kill them. Then, don't beat around the bush, just take them out and get rid of them as soon as you can. That will strike fear in the hearts of his friends to keep them from following that path. The ones that he's associated with. That's the way it works.
John, is the restitution made, if they find out it is an accident to the person that was killed, is restitution made to that family anyway?
No. God knows us. Accidents happen. You know, I thought about that when this suing each other got so rampant. I thought, God, my Aunt Gertie, my father's older sister, died because one of the nurses in the hospital accidentally switched the wrong button off when she was on oxygen. It wasn't intentional. It was after surgery. I just don't feel it's right to sue people for doing that. Not if they were completely innocent of any ill intent whatsoever. I just don't think it's right. People are human. You ever made a mistake? There's got to be some kind of justice and recognition of human frailty. And just pray, God, save me from making an accident hurt somebody. Have mercy on me. I know I make mistakes, cover for me. And God has saved me. I can't tell you the number of times when under the right circumstances I could have had a terrible wreck or something like that. He's done us all that way. Been very merciful to us. Well, let's see if we can finish up here in Numbers. You're blessed if you want to do the right thing. You see in verse 24 in chapter 35, it talks about the congregation being the judge. That's a trial by jury to see whether he's really a murderer or if it was an accident. And the congregation shall make sure he has safe passage and delivers the slayer out of the hand of the revenger of blood, and the congregation gives him safe passage back to the city of refuge. He has a guard to go back, and he abides in there to the death of the high priest. But if the slayer shall at any time come outside the border of the city of refuge, whither he was fled, then he's fair game. And the revenger of blood find him outside the borders of the city, and the revenger of blood kill him, that he shall not be guilty of murder, because he should have remained in the city of refuge until after the death of the high priest. Now, I think it's interesting that it says that if the slayer comes, in verse 26, outside the border of the city of refuge, I wonder, the city of refuge would have a wall, but I don't know that that wall would be the border, because they have fields outside the city.
It says something about so many feet outside the wall.
It says something very confusing, because in one place it says 1,000
Yeah.
cubits, and then another place it says 2,000 cubits. I don't know what it's talking about, but you've got at least 1,500 feet, 1,500 up to 3,000 feet of border around the city. So he could go outside the walls. He could do work in the field. He could, get some food, if that's what he's talking about. The border is in chapter 35, verse 4. It says 1,000 cubits. And then in the next verse it says 2,000 cubits. In verse 30, whoever kills somebody, the murderer shall be put to death if you have at least 2 witnesses. Just one witness is not enough. Maybe somebody holding a grudge. And moreover, you take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer. No money, no nothing. He'll be put him to death. And look at this in verse 32. You shall take no satisfaction, that is, no price, no amount of money, for him that is fled to the city of refuge, that he should come to dwell in the land until the death of the high priest. So there's no price you can pay to get out of the city of refuge, to go back home before the high priest dies. Chapter 36, now we have a continuation of the problem of Zelophehad's daughters, because the elders of Manasseh come and say, now listen, if these daughters of Zelophehad marry outside the tribe of Manasseh, then in the year of Jubilee, when everything goes back, the property is going to go to the men that they married, because that's who they belong to. And it's going to be taken away from Manasseh. Moses goes and talks to God about that, and he says, you're right too. The daughters of Zelophehad were right when they said, we deserve the inheritance even though we don't have any brothers. And you're right in saying that you can't take land from one tribe and give it to another just through marriage. So Moses commanded the daughters of Zelophehad to marry only from their own tribe. So any woman that owned inheritance was restricted to marriage within the borders of their own tribe, so that no tribe would ever lose its amount of land God gave them. That's chapter 26. And it says in verse 12, and they married unto the families of the sons of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in the tribe of the family of their father. These are the commandments and the judgments which the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses unto the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho, up around Shittim. Your assignment is to read Deuteronomy. That's it. No handouts.